Welcome to the Critical Media Studies Podcast. We're your hosts, Mike Rapici
and Barry Falk.
Dr. Rapici, how are you this evening? I hope you're well.
Dr. Falk, I am fantastic.
That's
I am well, and I hope you are too.
That's wonderful. I am well, and I'm excited to commence our discussion. This is part two of our discussion of Simone Weil's On the Abolition of All Political Parties. And following this, we're just going to go right into this and sort of pick up where we left off last time. And I think the opposition between the truth-seeking individual and the party member, that's kind of crucial to what I think we said last time. That's a crucial dynamic that Weil is investigating in this essay. But I think because we talked about various things, like what does truth mean to Weil? How do her arguments about truth relate to ideology and various and sundry matters? We didn't really talk about this opposition, but how about we dig in this time and try to clarify that opposition and then see where the evening takes us, Dr. Michael. We'll see where the evening takes us after that. So I'm going to use it as the on-ramp and maybe even our off-ramp, some passages near the beginning of this wonderful edition, a wonderful essay, and a wonderful edition. We are looking at the Simon Lee's translation in the very beautiful and helpful small edition published by the New York Review of Books. As a reminder to listeners, Simone Weil wrote this really kind of in the pitch battle of World War II in 1943. And that's the context. But she is thinking about broader, as we're going to see, she's thinking about broader issues of truth-telling, truth practices, and thinking about party politics. Definitely has a clear eye on her current situation, the rise of fascism, struggle between the Axis and the Allied powers, World War II. But there's definitely a kind of ahistorical or timeless argument that she believes is part of her argument. So with that, let's get into it, shall we? I want to start from on pages 21, 22, and actually 23 of the text. And Dr. Rapici, your task is to interrupt, amplify, and augment as I go. So I'm going to start here on 21 and proceed pretty briskly over the next two pages. There is only one answer, truth, but I think this is an important place, and I'm kind of taking your lead here, Michael, in our pre-game talk to sort of clarify what Simone Weil means by truth. And I'm actually thinking of this as I've been thinking about this essay preparatory to this evening. I was thinking that Simone Weil may not have much in common with Michel Foucault, but one thing that I think she does share with him is a kind of like Foucault would not talk about truth, but he would talk about practices of truth, discourses that produce truth. And although Weil and Foucault would disagree on what practices get you to truth and the ontological nature of truth, I think they both would strongly agree that truth is something you arrive at, or that individuals arrive at the end point or after a particular process. And that process is what I'm going to describe now, or what she describes here. So I will commence. There is only one answer. Truth is all the thoughts that surge in the mind of a thinking creature, note, individual, right? A thinking creature who's unique, that's important too. The unique individual has unique, total, exclusive desire for the truth. So the truth is something outside of the individual, but the individual's unique, total, and exclusive desire for the truth seems to be a precondition for attaining the truth. Let's continue.
Real quick, would we say, and I think the answer is yes, but it's worth maybe pausing for a second.
Yes.
truth is all the thoughts that surge in the mind of a thinking creature whose unique, total, exclusive desires for the truth. Maybe one of the things that's worth noting here is that as she's describing it, truth is external to the individual.
I think so.
And I think
That
that's
might be where she disagrees with or differs from a lot of postmodern thinkers,
very,
including right.
very much. But I think that's a sort of a necessary note, because it's going to get us into the discussion about why ideology and desire are going to be flawed, because those are
right
implicit in the human existence, if you will. So
yes,
okay,
in the individual, in the lives of the unique individual.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So just continuing. Yeah, how can we desire truth if we have no prior knowledge of it?
There you
Actually, that sentence also suggests what you just suggested.
Yeah.
There's something exterior to the truth, right? This is the mystery of all mysteries, Dr. Rapiji. Words that express a perfection which no mind can conceive of, dash, God, truth, justice, dash, silently evoked with desire, but without any preoccupation.
No, preconception.
Oh, yes, preconception. Yeah, absolutely. Preconception. And I think I'll read the sentence, but I'm going to give a quick gloss.
Sure.
Silently evoked with desire, but without any preconception, have the power to lift up the soul and flood it with light. I'll just put a tag in this because I think we're going to return to it later. Without any preconception. Part of the reason that party affiliation is a counter to the truth is that party affiliation kind of gives you a preconception.
It does. It has a North Star.
Right? It has a North Star.
Right. So as a member of a party, you are already ideologically, intellectually aligned with something. And that preconception is part of the problem, because again, it is implicit within the party and it is predetermined. So those two, I think, are her real sort of linchpins here.
The linchpins, her crucial to her critique.
Yes,
what's better party said. What the critique that she is about to develop after she mentions her truth protocols.
Right.
She's going to go into she's going to tell us a lot of what she doesn't like about party politics. But we already are, as you noted, we already are getting a glimmer of that here. So briskly continuing. It is when we desire truth with an empty soul, without preconceptions, and without attempting to guess its content, that we receive the light, the enlightenment, right? Therein resides the entire mechanism of attention. And Michael, you suggested, I think rightly, very rightly, that we kind of begin here because the concept of attention, which we already noted, and Simone Weil readers already noted, are already aware of the fact that attention is one of her main
central concepts. Yeah.
Central concept. And when we talked about Simone Weil in terms of Simone Weil's pedagogy and applied her thoughts on pedagogy to contemporary discussions of, media pedagogy, or compared it to media pedagogy, media-driven education, we were noticing that attention is also her kind of keyword and her main criteria. So just a little bit more about that, and then I want to hear your comments. So she turns almost immediately after those paragraphs I read to talk about attention with in greater specificity. I will continue. Even for those who do not compromise their inner integrity, the existence of such penalties unavoidably penalties of failing to live up to a party system unavoidably distorts their judgment. If they try to react against party control, this very impulse to react is itself unrelated to the truth, and as such should be suspect, and so in turn should be this suspicion. True attention is a state so difficult for any human creature, so violent, that any emotional disturbance can derail it. Therefore, One must always endeavor strenuously to protect one's inner faculty of judgment against the turmoil of personal hopes and fears that's a period, but what the personal hopes and fears in this context are the personal hopes and fears that are gained from the insertion of the truth seeking individual into a party political framework.
Would it be would it be fair to suggest that the personal hopes and fears, right, are the things which distract us from attention? Fair.
Fair, fair.
And that we become overwhelmed with those, certainly party affiliation, right? Like to me, what Vey is saying is we're basically doing this focus dance, if you will, right?
Huh.
The idea is to remain open and attentive. And we talked about this earlier with Heidegger, right? Like the empty vessel, the empty jug waiting to be filled. Okay. And so it's this
and and
meditative.
and and just hold your thought,
Sure,
please.
sure.
Just to mention about how apt the jug metaphor is, because part of Heidegger's, and I think this is
This
very
is
vague,
this is his essay,
right?
The Thing, right?
Yeah,
That
yeah,
we're
the
okay.
thing, yeah, and part of the reason he mentions the jug is that there's something platonically fitting about the jug example in this, that jugs are meant to be, they're built around a fundamental emptiness or void.
Right.
The void, which, that
Is what
doesn't,
defines them.
yeah, the void in this case is not a simple negation. The void is actually the structural principle that makes the jug a jug.
Yeah, that's well
So,
said.
yeah,
Right. So she's basically arguing that we our aim, right? Like if we're doing it right, we are attentive so that we can be filled, and we are filled essentially with
exactly.
this divine truth. And I guess I'm not pushing back on what you said, but I want maybe a moment of clarification here.
Well, let's do it.
The problem
I
with
can do it.
the problem with party politics is that when we shift our focus or our attention, which is kind of a loaded word right now, but our focus to party politics, we necessarily inherit a perception, an ideology, a telos, right? Like this becomes something very different than being open and empty. But
Absolutely.
I think that she talks elsewhere in here about how it's not just necessarily political parties. Part of what threw me the very first time I read this
Hmm.
was that I approached this with a very political bent, right? Like this was an anti-political essay. And it's
And
not.
and it's not, but I just want to say this. I do think the current popularity of this book, and the fact that this is kind of the book that I've noticed gets on college syllabi,
Mhm.
I think it's based on a misunderstanding. I think they feel there's an attempt to annex or appropriate they to anarchist thinking. And there's a strong anarchist individualist tendency to the essay, but I very strongly agree with you. There is a way in which this is a philosophical essay and not a political tract. It's not
No,
a
and
political
I
statement.
don't see it. I don't see it as an anarchist essay either, because
Yeah.
it's not arguing that there's no right way or that it's
Or
chaos.
there's no authority.
Eh,
There is no legitimate authority,
No,
right? Yeah. It's not.
quite the opposite. It is arguing,
Right.
I think, that there is a
Right.
higher authority. Uh,
Exactly.
and
Right.
so, but the point, I don't want to lose this,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Please continue.
It's not so much that it's a political issue that takes us away from the truth. It's that any sort of human ego-led institution
Is going to do
is
that.
going to do
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
And so we have, so this is, I mean, this is really, she's calling for a tremendous amount of self-discipline and self-restraint.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
the problem becomes manifest when we indulge essentially in human desire or intention or ego, because that takes us, it makes, it's almost as if like the goal is to be selfless.
Indeed.
And all of these institutions, organizations, or isms, if you will, are ego driven and therefore in some opposition to what she's identifying as attentive.
I think that's a great observation. I'm going to add a little something to it in line of our mini discussion right here of anarchist thinking. Now, what you just described about selflessness,
Yep.
there's no reason per se that a purely anarchist, I'm thinking of the 19th century polemics by somebody like Bakunin or Max Stirner or Benjamin Tucker, a lot of Emma Goldman, a lot of stuff, heyday of anarchist concept and anarchist philosophy in the mid to late 19th century, early 20th century. There's no reason why the concept of mutual aid and selflessness would necessarily be antithetical to anarchist politics. But if you look at the mainstream of anarchist philosophizing in that era, it's all theorization of the ego. Max Stirner's book is called The Ego and His Own, right? So that perhaps it's arbitrary, but historically it's been the case that most arguments against authority have tried to put the ego in the place of the authority of the state
Right.
or any authority that it's trying to displace.
Mm-hmm.
And you're very right. That's not really
No.
what our friend Simone is doing. Michael, I think we're able. I'm not looking at the clock here, but I think we're able to accelerate from this point, unless you have something you want to add. I think we're ready to talk about the second poll. I think I hope, I trust, adequately describe her attitude toward truth and the mechanisms of truth telling or truth attainment. I think we can now talk about, and you've already started talking about the ways in which the party as she defines it, party politics as she defines it, kind of works counter to that. I think we're ready to
Yeah,
go
no, I think so.
full
I think
throttle,
so.
full throttle into that. So, two passages I want to read. One on page 27, where this is a pretty detailed paragraph talking about the problems that she feels happens to the well, and this is important to note, I think. This is the problem that occurs even when people with good intentions
Mm-hmm.
and good philosophies and good everything, when they join a party, it's not like this is what happens when bad actors join,
No, 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 no. This is
right? This, according to her, is what happens when even the best and the brightest, whenever you join a party, something rigidifies, something goes wrong in the truth telling apparatus. And so that's what this paragraph is about. So I'll continue. When someone joins a party, it is usually because he is perceived in the activities and propaganda of this party a number of things that appear to him just and good. I mean,
mm-hmm.
saying you can do this for good reasons, and that the party member, the person who commits to a party, is probably doing it because they feel some sort of alignment, powerful alignment with a policy that is articulated by the party and that they believe the individual believes is just and good. Still, he has probably never studied the position of the party on all the problems of public life.
Right.
So there hasn't been a meditation of what it means to be in the political party in its totality. So that's a problem. But that kind of concentrated, holistic attention, rather, is something she says, well, you got to have that if you want to approach the truth. When joining the party, he therefore also endorses a number of positions which they haven't thought of, which he does not know. In fact, he submits his thinking. This is where a little of the anarchist verb set, right, emerges. In fact, the individual, he submits his thinking to the authority of the party. As later on, little by little, he begins to learn these positions, he will accept these positions, the new positions,
Right.
without further examination. That's really telling, really, really damning in the Veda universe. This replicates exactly the situation of whoever joins the Catholic Orthodoxy along the lines of St. Thomas. She had previously mentioned that the kind of circular logic of church attendance, that you believe in the truth of the church because you're a member of the church.
Yep.
Circular thing. In fact, I'll finish up here. In fact, and with very few exceptions, when a man joins a party, he submissively, this is a little shards of the anarchist, right? Temperament, right? The individual in joining a party and submitting to that collective is submissively adopting a mental attitude, which he will express later on with words such as, instead of saying, I am the individual truth teller, which you suspect that they would want them to say, they will say, well, as a Democrat, as a monarchist, she writes, as a socialist, I think that it
Dot
is
dot
so
dot.
comfortable. It is so comfortable. It amounts to having no thoughts at all. And then the killer line, and I'll stop here. Nothing is more comfortable than not having to think.
I
Comments.
love
Comments.
this. This is absolutely damning. If you are in line with what she's thinking, this is really sharp, right? The idea is you align yourself with a particular party ideology because you agree with what it stands for, where it points, how it functions. The problem is that you can never know everything. You can only really know what you know and see what you see, and it will always be bigger than your perception. And because one follows two, and two follows three, and three follows four, we tend to be led along the sort of policy or the doctrine of whatever party. And we don't question it because it fits so comfortably into what we know. And then Vey's argument here, right, is that if I come in thinking A, B, and C are correct, well, A, B, and C leads to D, E, F, and G, and I haven't considered those. I don't. And at some point along this, wonderful ideological alphabet, I am now just accepting things because what does she say? As a monarchist, as a socialist, that we start to identify with the party as opposed to as an individual. As an individual, we open ourselves up, technically, theoretically, to the prospect of attention because we can be empty. As a
Beautifully
socialist
put.
or as a
Beautifully put.
monarchist, I
Beautifully put.
can't possibly be empty because I am a socialist or I am a monarchist.
And so you know what to think, even if you haven't thought about
Right, you're told
it.
right
Okay.
because well, no, quite the opposite. It's not what to think; it's what to say. It's
Oh,
what to believe.
thank you. Thank you. You're told what to say. You know what to say, and you don't have to think about
Right, and
it.
this
You know
and the
what to say.
problem, and what I love this. Right, nothing is more comfortable than not having to think. You have an opinion at the ready because your identity has shifted from I to I as a fill in the blank. And that already pre populates the answers to every position along party lines. It is convenient. It is seamless. It is easy. There is no struggle.
Mhm.
And if there's a struggle, you can always work backwards to work forward so that you can find where you are in your alphabet and what you're supposed to think about.
Right. Right. Well, Dr. Rapici, we may be at this point already, and if you would like to do this without an example, but I'll tell you where I'm going to remind you where we are in case you lost track.
This is my
In our prior discussion,
as a member of this discussion. Where do you
as
tell
a
me where
member
I
of
am?
this discussion, you and I, we spoke. We do, dear listener, we do talk among ourselves and do some planning for these podcasts that we share with you. And so I'm about to move to the final passage that we sort of said that we wanted to highlight. Another characterization of the problems of belonging to a political party. But, and here's what I mean by your choice. You've already kind of started alluding to, I mean, our big question, the question that we what we want to end this episode with is a discussion of, we want to jump out of 1943 and Vey after lingering in 1943 and Vey and say something about the relevance or non-relevance of Vey's arguments to 2026. Sounds like we're already starting this. And if you wanted to pick it up from here, we could. And I won't have to read the next passage on page 29. But if you would like, I could read the next passage on page 29, as we talked about. And then we can have our freewheeling discussion where we're going to end, we will end the podcast with some thoughts about the continuing relevance. Or interestingly, maybe you're going to say, we don't have this fully scripted. Maybe you're going to say, maybe this isn't fully relevant, or is not relevant in certain important aspects. So that's the part where we're about to get to. Should I read that passage, or do you want to weigh in on this right now?
Well, as I grasp about in the dark, Barry, I feel like I'm
Well,
being
we all do
asked.
so.
I feel like I'm being asked if I want to have a discussion about cable news, or I want to have a discussion about the end of page 29 and then have a discussion about cable news.
Yes, you are. That is your perceptive.
And or shall we say, pick your sort of what however they're aligned Facebook group or Reddit page or the
Yes.
internet. Yes,
Yes.
I think that it would probably, let's look at 29.
Let's look at 29. I think so too. I think
I have a
I'm
sneaking suspicion this is still relevant. I'm just going to go ahead and let the cat out of the bag.
yeah, I think it might be. I think it might be. And I am being very contemporary in that I gave you the illusion of choice in
Oh, I never
that
had a
that
chance,
previous
Barry,
exchange,
because I
but
never
you
had a
never
chance.
had a chance. Yeah, you never had a chance. So in that way, form follows function, or we had a meta moment. I don't know how to describe it. Let's do it though. So Dr. Michael, page 29. This is one of the final examples of the pernicious nature of party affiliation. And I want to read this one paragraph. The artificial crystallization into political parties coincides so little with genuine affinities. And I'm going to break up the sentence
Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah, yeah.
sort of explain what genuine affinities mean. I think it means a couple different things. Mostly it means general affinities, general qualities of being human, and also the general qualities, the required qualities for thinking
Wouldn't you
and
say
individual existence, right?
that the genuine affinities, would I be going too far to say that the genuine, the natural, the authentic, the jug,
Organic,
the shape of the
organic,
jug,
yes, the
this is
shape of the
who
dog.
we are. So she's really saying the artificial crystallization into political parties,
Right,
right?
right,
The party is artificial. It is not natural. It is not the natural
correct,
state.
correct.
Coincides
Artificial
so
crystallization
Right, coincides so little with
with
our
our genuine,
natural state.
yes. I think genuine affinities is, I haven't read it in French, but my interpretation is that natural state would be a dead ringer for what's going on here. Okay, I'll start again. Artificial crystallization into political parties coincides so little with genuine affinities that a member of parliament will often find himself disagreeing with a colleague from within his own party and in complete agreement with a politician from another party.
Now let's pause for a second.
Please.
This is not to say that that disagreement becomes articulated or actually voiced
Oh,
necessarily.
in fact, I think that's a really crucial point. This may be an internal
It
monologue,
is. It,
an
it would
internal
have to be, because I think that at our basic core authentic self, right? Attention cannot be a thing that we aspire to which we aspire, if we're not somehow pre-programmed or pre-aligned, predisposed to seek that. And so I do think that she
The,
believes that there is an internal mechanism which wants us to drift towards, to lean towards
the truth.
attention. So
Yeah,
it's
attention to the
natural
truth.
that we would second guess the party line. The problem is the party line is pretty strong.
And this unnatural artificial crystallization leads to the contradictions she describes
Yes.
in the next sentence. How many times in Germany in 1932 might a communist and a Nazi conversing in the street have been struck by a sort of mental vertigo on discovering that they were in complete agreement on all the issues? Okay, that I am glad that you let me go ahead and read that paragraph, because maybe it's that last point where I see, but I want to hear you first. But it's that last point that I think there's a really striking relevance, that a striking relevance or striking anticipation, better word maybe, of today's events. When a lot of times the the political tensions within our parties seems to exist between the part, either the fierce partisan or the centrist or a moderate. But there's a single partisan view in the party that is uncompromising and unchanging, whereas there is often a big confluence of critique between the extremes on our right in America and the extremes on our left. Meaning that both extremes of right and left might be agreeing that there's something wrong with the price, the cost of living. There's something wrong with our health care,
Hmm.
right? The disagreements come when you talk about, I don't know, party loyalists, party thinkers, party partisans of one particular politician over another, right? It's certain mechanisms of party affiliation that obscure the fact. Maybe you disagree with me on this, that, um, but I was. Let me say what I'm thinking. I'm
Yeah.
interested to
Yeah.
hear if you disagree with it. Like, so it's that last sentence that really struck me this time reading it again, and I was thinking, well, I mean, what she's talking about sounds like totally crazy, that a communist is going to agree with a Nazi. So what does she mean by that? I think what she means by that is that both of them are fed up with the state. Both of them are fed up with parliamentarianism. Both of them are fed up with the party of the politics of the status quo. And so I think in that situation, one can imagine the truth seekers in either political party might be gravitating or feel an affinity to another side that they cannot, as you pointed out, vocalize. So that to me, I think, is a similarity between 1943 and 2026. But I'm
Yeah.
keen to hear what you think.
I would agree. I mean, I think that we have to go back to her line at the end of page 27, where she says, nothing is more comfortable than not having to think. I think that what we're talking about here is that regardless of your political party, right? And regardless of the subject at hand,
Regardless of the subject
it's
matter. Yeah.
not to say that a political party or a particular ideology or a particular way of seeing or believing or thinking won't sometimes be aligned with what's right. Right. So, I mean, what's the saying, right? A stop clock is still right twice a day, right? Like every
Right.
now and then, it's
Right.
possible that a member of a party can have a view or position that is correct, that is right, that is truthful, that is good. Okay, that would be consistent with the thinking of non-ego driven existence. That's possible. Okay, the problem. So I don't think that it's fair to say that one side is right, one side is wrong, one way of good, one way is bad. I think that's very important, and she does a really nice job of being sort of apolitical about this.
Right.
I think the problem we have is that when you are aligned, even if you are right, you are never going to be right, or what's the word I'm looking for here? Aware, right? What's the word I'm looking for? You,
Is
you,
it awareness, individual
you're
awareness,
never going to
or
be aligned with the truth. You're never
oh,
going to
aligned?
be
Aligned. Okay.
fully aligned with the truth, because
Okay. Okay.
even if it's somehow conveniently right in one way, that the party line will take you along the party line, which is ego driven. And I think that what she's speaking about here is that it's more comfortable to not think. It's more comfortable to say, as a Republican, as a Democrat, as a monarchist, as a whatever you are, because you don't have to think when things get complicated, when things get uncomfortable. You have your pre-paved path. But especially, I think, in a way, especially if you happened to be right,
Hmm.
and you say, look, yes, there's a problem with the cost of living. We have to fix the cost of living. That's right. That's truth. That's good, right? That's you're in the right contemplative spot. You've stumbled upon this, but you weren't really in the right contemplative spot. It just so happens that the party line happened to go through that intersection at the right way.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, that even that it's possible, I think, within her schema, to imagine saying the right thing for the wrong
It's yeah,
reasons.
that's well said, right? And so I think the dissatisfaction is going to be like, wow, okay, so I got close to this. This was good. And the party line is now taking me along these lines. The dissatisfaction is really, I think, that tension
That's
between being comfortable
that's a good point.
and knowing that this comfort is counterproductive, right? Like I have the answers and I can proudly stand on those answers right now because they are aligned. And we would feel that. But then we have to go this way. And that's the great word in politics now, right? That gets us to compromise.
Right, right, right.
And, I don't think that Ms. Vey was one for compromise.
No, this is a very uncompromising essay in this, in the stark way that, in fact, I think we were true to the essay if in this program we mention, we emphasize, if a listener gets out of this, of course, we always encourage people to read the things that we talk about because we think they're worth reading. But if you're unaware of the essay and you got from our description that she is playing with with a stark opposition, I won't say well, I would call it a binary opposition, but usually when we talk about binary oppositions, it's kind of automatic. And she doesn't have reasons for making the rigid distinctions. She feels she has a lot of reasons to make the rigid distinctions she's making, but she still tries to trace and imagines and argues for uh, a stark opposition that exists between the truth-seeking individual and the party member, whatever their intentions, no matter how pure and noble and just and truth seeking the party member's
Well,
intentions may
there's
be.
a stark difference between the two, right? Like the truth seeking individual is trying to pay attention, and
Right.
the
Right.
party affiliation negates that possibility
Negate
because
attention.
rather than paying attention, you are adhering to whatever it is that your party affiliation gives you.
Right. And you are not empty like the jug should be.
No, you
You're
can't be because
you're
you
full.
are a,
You're replete. Yeah.
yes. Well done, Barry.
Well, well, thank you. I'm glad to pass the audition.
You
And
did.
you certainly passed the audition,
As
Dr. Michael
you
Rapici.
you did well with this. I think as a thinker,
As a
Barry,
thinker,
as a
oh
thinker,
boy,
you
oh
did
no.
we're in trouble.
Now you're just turning my head. We're going to have to stop this podcast right now.
Well done. No,
But it was
this
a
was
pleasure.
interesting.
It was a pleasure.
I'll tell you, if and I'm speaking to you, but I'm also speaking any of you listening. Simone Weil is a delightful read. She's not obtuse or complicated in the way that a lot of the theory can be. It's insightful. I'm not entirely sure how practical And
Yeah, she doesn't. I mean,
it's
her
not the world's
pride
most
and joy
pragmatic,
is.
but it
Yeah,
does. But I think what she offers and what I really love about this is, again, this is not a handbook for how to fix things
no, it's not.
so
Right,
much as
right,
it's
right.
it's a lens into I think some of the problems. So just real quick before we go, the question was, well, do we want to jump ahead? Do we want to jump back? If you look at cable news, right, there is a line of thought, and you can see how, and this gets us into sort of the multiplicity and the truthiness of things, right? Like you handle whatever your, God, I hate using these words, but whatever your content is along party lines. And then the next step becomes so incredibly obvious and predictable. And if you look at something, and it would really have to be something that you just don't care about, right?
Mhm.
But if you could find yourself in a situation where you're looking at news from the left and news from the right about a subject matter that you don't care about, that you don't have ego, you're not personally invested in, that you can just sort of, look at from an empty perspective, this makes so much sense. And that's why I love this. It really is an insightful eye into sort of the problems with the way that we kind of necessarily live.
Um, absolutely. I just say this that one thing that strikes me, you mentioned cable news, and I was thinking, oh my goodness, Michael and I are showing our age, and that we're
That
talking
doesn't
about
really
cable
exist
news.
the way it did. Yeah.
Right. And but then I was thinking, well, what does exist? And I heard verification of this on my local NPR, so it must be true this morning. But they were talking about the report was talking about the ways in which younger people are really gravitating to online sources, and there is there aren't televisual sources that they were relying on, let alone the old print media. But increasingly, there's not even there's nothing like cable news that that is really holding people's attention. Well, how much harder, though, I think it is for that young person and for me in my own media diet. The algorithm just encourages you to stick with a party affiliation or to find a party. I find it really and here I'm going to break away from talking about young people. I'm just going to talk about my own relationship to YouTube.
Yeah.
It's really easy to mess. We talk about, and Bernard Stiegler and others talk about algorithmic governmentality, and it's a potent thing, and it's a potent thing because it happens unconsciously and as a result of our interactions with media. But in one respect, Dr. Apici, the algorithm is the simplest thing to subvert ever.
Oh,
All I have to do is instead of look at my XY sources, my XY podcasts, X and instead of my usual go-to news podcasts, I'm going to look at ABC instead of XYZ. I can do that. And then my algorithm magically
but I'll
will
give you
change.
something even. Here's the thing. It's the word the word that came to me. It's much more pernicious than that because with the algorithm as sort of idiosyncratic as it is, we are able to exist absolutely up to our necks in some
Indeed.
sort of ideologically
Absolutely. Absolutely.
with the assumption that we're being attentive
With the assumption, and
because
we think I'm paying attention to the news
I
because I
am and
saw
I'm and
XYZ. Right.
I
Right.
am
Right.
a free thinker because
Right.
I'm not
Because I saw it all the time.
watching.
I have a steady
Yeah,
media diet.
I
I'm not
have.
watching cat videos. I'm
So
not watching
what?
cat
So
videos.
this is an interesting little detour here, right? The modern version of this is really problematic because the political party has been replaced with an algorithm.
With the algorithm.
The idea that this is a battle between human ego and attention, we
has
now
been
have an algorithm that is controlling the ego, that is
and
directing the ego,
and
and
that
that
allows
is,
us to redefine what attention means in our case.
well, it
So
becomes that, yeah, it becomes,
yeah,
well, so one, attention is I think it's split. Like the way that we conceive of attention, we have to do this on two different sides of the coin. On one hand, paying attention no longer gets us anywhere
Sure.
because we don't have sort of a detached analog moment of God, what's the word? I'm really stumbling with my words. There is no noesis anymore. You can't. It is
Right.
so
Right.
hard to step out of
Right.
the algorithm
Right.
to actually attend to what to the jug. I'm just going to say it that way. That's the easiest
Right.
way of saying it.
Right. Right.
We now our moments that feel attentive are still so often algorithmically driven, which is misleading because I want to look to a party and say, I question your ideology. I want to look to a figurehead and say, I question your behavior. It's not human. We are now directed by a non human actor that knows us better than we do, that knows our proclivities and our desires for attention and can subvert and or shape those. And that's terrifying.
That's terrifying. And I was about this was the where I was. I love the what you brought up, and you put a very fine point on the dilemma. You very well described the dilemma. I'm going to end on an even more depressing note about maybe it's only a depressing note about myself because there is an easy way to subvert the algorithmic. There is an easy, quote unquote, easy way to subvert algorithmic governmentality. You can change your feed by rejecting your usual fare. I find that really hard to do because I think I only have so much time. I don't want to check out a variety of sources. I don't want to spend that time thinking about it. So it's so easy for me to think I am paying serious attention by paying fealty, by repeating my performance or repeating my participation in my usual, in what the algorithm usually feeds me.
See, I disagree with that because I think that even if I log out of all of my accounts
Mm-hmm.
and I start looking and consuming at content that
Yeah,
is random,
yeah,
right?
yeah. You don't think it gets me out of it?
No, because it will still determine a pattern and it will still direct what's next. You don't have,
Sure,
see, the idea here is with attention, you are open to what the divine will of God is going to show you and fill you with.
sure. It's a
The
surprise
divine
and it's
will of
outside of
God,
you, right?
you
It's
you
outside of you,
yes,
right?
YouTube is
Right.
still outside of you. It masquerades as that.
But
But you're
it's not
now going
really
to
exterior,
right
right?
now
It's not really.
you get cat videos in German because of whatever it was that you saw before is
Right.
somehow connected. There is still a connection, a path. It is like what do you want to call it? A digital ideology, right? But there's some sort of I don't think you can exist outside of some sort of algorithmic control. It might not be as personalized as it would be if you're watching your own content, you're existing in your own patterns. But I think that all that happens when you step outside of that and try and embrace what you deem to be random is that now you just cede control to an algorithm. That's not attention. That's just a different way of not thinking.
Different way of not thinking, different way of not paying attention in basic
Basically, what
terms.
happens is you found a way to be still comfortable, but somehow less productive in terms of being consistent with yourself. You just made
I
it
think
harder for yourself.
I think on that wonderful point, and sad point, pathos, full of pathos. I think we're going to stop right here,
Yeah.
and maybe we're going to, what? Let's not tie ourselves down, but I think we can mention to listeners we're going to some possibilities for the next few episodes. For example, we talked about in a previous episode, we talked about Louis Althusser's classic essay on interpolation
Yep.
and ideology and ideological state apparatuses. We're thinking of turning to that. Also, on the possible rotation might be a portion of Jacques Ellul, another friend of the program. Jacques Ellul's propaganda book. Propaganda, though we didn't discuss it much, is a key word in this
Yeah.
particular essay. For and they is uncompromising, and that all party doctrine
It's
for her
propaganda.
is propaganda. So that might be what we follow up with, but it will be exciting. We'll try to make it as exciting as possible.
You know, the other thing, honestly,
listener.
if anyone has suggestions, I would absolutely welcome them.
We would love, to hear it.
Email us and let us know what you're interested in, because this is a fascinating topic. But Barry, I think this was a productive discussion. I really enjoyed it.
Well, me too, Michael.
All right. Well, be well, and we'll do this again soon.
All right. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Critical Media Studies podcast. To find out more about the show, check out our webpage at criticalmediastudiespodcast.com.